Beyond making teapots, especially the throwing and the assembling of them, there are so many small tasks that go into their creation, and in this film I'll be going over some of the more unseen steps that are necessary in order to create a successful teapot. The first job that has to be done after they've been bisque fired is waxing the underside of the lid, the rim of the teapot and its base. And to speed things up, I typically wax lids on top of the vessels like so, as normally I'll be doing this for about 20 pots at once, and if I can remove one cycle of tap centering from each, it ends up streamlining the process and making it that bit faster. This is a very simple wax emulsion which I buy from Scarva pottery suppliers, and essentially wherever it's coated the glaze will not be able to adhere to, which is important as I fire both the body of the teapot and its lid together using a material called wadding, which I'll get onto later. After the wax on the rim has dried, I flip the pot upside down and coat a layer of wax over the entirety of the bottom, and I typically dab a bit of extra wax in my maker's mark, just so it's fully covered, as it can be a bit of a pain digging glaze out of the small imprint. Next, I'll move on to arguably my least favourite part about making teapots. I grip the body carefully with a pair of tongs, submerge it, and as the walls are thin I always reach inside with a finger to support the base, as glaze is much heavier than water, and with all that added weight, in the past I have had tongs split right through the walls of the pot, as I've tried to lift it out without properly draining the glaze inside. One thing to note, and you can see me do it here, is that before the pots are dipped into the glaze, I take some water on a tiny brush and dab it over the draining holes inside. This saturates the clay body here, which means the holes will take on a thinner layer of glaze, which is a good thing as I don't want them to become blocked, as obviously that would render the teapot, well, useless. And with all the teapots glazed, I'll take this board away and set it up somewhere high so that they can dry out overnight. As this specific glaze dries, it becomes more powdery and easier to tidy up. And it's now that I fettle over the tong marks and make the surface all the way around as flush as it can be. This is slow, steady work, but it does make all the difference. It's also a job that's incredibly easy to mess up, as if I accidentally rub an area to be too thin, it'll give me subpar results once fired. And of course that does still occasionally happen, even with years of experience. The base of the teapot is then sponged, spotless, as despite it being waxed, there's always some glaze that settles onto it. I then move on to carefully removing glaze from the inside of the holes. I don't want to get rid of all of it, just where it's thick, and even though I dab these holes with water, they can still occasionally become blocked, which makes this step vital. I also tend to remove some of the thickness from inside the spout too. I'm not sure how crucial this is, as I know a constricting spout is good, as it helps to build pressure as you pour as the liquid is forced through a smaller gap, but really it's the shape of the clay underneath the glaze that makes the biggest difference here. I use the same sharp needle to make sure the hole in the lid is free of glaze. This way the pot can pull air through it as it pours, which helps the liquid pour without glugging or sputtering. The wax portion of the lid is then cleaned, and for all of this I work over a basin of water, as this catches the glaze dust and it means I can recycle it later. To clean up the rim, I take the teapot over to the wheel, centre it, and then hold a damp sponge on the lip, moving it occasionally, as when the sponge clogs up with glaze, it stops removing it efficiently. That's one teapot down, 19 left to go. These aren't ready to be fired yet though. First, I need to place some wadding in between the lid and the body. This stuff is made from 50% china clay, EPK kaolin in this case, and 50% coarse alumina hydrate. This creates a very refractory material, which can be used for all kinds of things, from waddings like these, to bat wash if watered down enough, which is the stuff I brush over my kiln shelves to protect them. In this instance though, I roll it out into a long coil and slice off tiny segments into groups of 5. These are then placed evenly around the lid and they actually attach rather easily onto the waxed surface. But if you are having issues, you can use PVA glue. Just be careful not to let it dribble down onto your glazes, as it can leave marks that are visible once fired. I then take the lid and carefully push it onto the body of the teapot in such a way that the only thing touching between the two parts is the waddings themselves. As inside a gas-fired atmosphere, if clay touches clay, it'll stick, even if it isn't glazed. And when it comes to removing the components, if they are stuck, you can end up damaging the delicate rim or the flange of the lid. All of these pots are then placed into my Roda KG340 gas kiln, which is manually operated and takes about 8.5 hours to fire. With time, kiln shelves can become quite worn, or at least the battwash already on them does, and so every now and then I brush a new layer of battwash onto these. Very early the following day, after the kiln has been packed, I arrive at the workshop, light the kiln and fire it. I gradually increase the temperature until I reach 860 degrees Celsius, at which point the reduction atmosphere is initiated. I do this by increasing the gas pressure, the air pressure, and by throttling the exhaust, essentially. This way gas accumulates in the chamber and there's simply not enough oxygen inside for it to burn properly. And as a result, it ends up finding oxygen from inside the clay and glazes themselves. And it's this that gives you colours and textures that you can't quite achieve in an electric kiln in the same way. A few days later, once the kiln has cooled down enough, it can be opened. A riveting, exciting moment, even after all these years. With all the pots unpacked, I give the base of each a quick sand, and with the teapots, I usually leave the lids attached for this process. Now, removing the lids can be challenging at times. I can usually just pry them off with my hand, but sometimes they need the encouragement of being bashed with a lump of wood, something heavy and with a flat side, and I'm careful not to hit any sharp edges on the vessel, rather I only aim for flat expanses of glaze. The last step for these pots is to grind the lids into place. And to do this I use Chemico valve lapping paste, which I smear into the underside of the lid all the way around, and then I sit and patiently grind the components together. I then scrape the paste off and add it to the next lid. I grind that teapot and then move on to the next, and to the next, and so on. Some time later, as this isn't a quick task, after all the lidded pots have had their lids ground, I wash each of them very thoroughly with hot, soapy water. It's worth mentioning that if you're using a lower firing clay or something like terracotta, where the clay body itself remains porous, this particular paste can be relatively difficult to remove, as it gets absorbed a tiny bit, so it works best on fully vitrified clay. I then let all the pots dry out for a couple of hours, and now, finally, they're finished. And the lids spin beautifully in the bodies of the teapots. They pour pretty well too. Short and simple this week, but I hope this video touched on some notes and demonstrated a few of the small steps that go into making better pots. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch, and I'll see you next time.